Chevy put the wrist.
Welcome to Barbershop Talks. Questions for Roberto. So, what inspired you to become a barber?
Lo primero que me inspira a ser barbero fue saber que tengo una conexión en un lugar donde puedo relacionarme con la gente de mi comunidad. Puedo brindarles un servicio, algo especial que todos aspiran. Me inspiró mucho poder brindarle, desde mi trabajo, brindarle una mejor posibilidad a mi familia. Me inspira que aprendo algo diario también con lo que hago, relacionarme con la gente, saber de
The first thing that got Roberto inspired was how to make a connection and how possible his work made him to click with people, to bond with people from the community especially. That was one of the first things that really inspired him. Another thing was also supporting his family financially.
Ayudar a mi familia, pero también que me inspiró mucho. Aprendo habilidades profesionalmente, aprendo muchas cosas que profesionalmente que las voy aplicando en la vida cotidiana, en el diario aprendo. Es una conexión, es un trabajo que me gusta, pero es como si es parte de un deporte que nosotros me inspira a trabajar en un ambiente donde me siento bien relajado, me siento como que no es una presión negativa, sino es un lugar donde disfruto mi trabajo, disfruto lo que hago. Más me inspira también saber que le doy una autoestima al cliente y que más regalo verlo al final de un buen servicio, una buena sonrisa. Y entonces son cosas así que cada día me inspira más de lo que hago.
Another important thing that Roberto said was that he got inspired because he can help people improve their self-esteem after a good service. So that was something that really inspired him, and also because he gets to learn something new every day. He enjoys his work, but also he takes it as like a hobby. He really learns and gets to practice not only professionally, of course, with the clients, but also he gets to take that into his daily life, what he has learned into his daily life.
And so, what advice would you give to someone interested in pursuing a career in barbering?
Ser paciente, be patient. Llegar a ser el barbero de que el barbero que todo el mundo quiere, toma tiempo. Estudia, prepárate, sé humilde, trabaja decentemente y al mismo tiempo no compitas con otros barberos, compite con tú mismo, ser una mejor persona.
Be patient, be humble. Also, do not compete with others, but with yourself. Make sure that you are providing that service that people and clients want.
Llegar a ser aquel barbero que todo el mundo quiere, toma tiempo.
to become the barber that everybody is going to talk about in town takes time. So again, be patient, educate yourself, learn, work hard.
And I think you've done quite a
Don't rush your time. Estudia, aprende, supérate.
Don't rush, learn, study, and keep going. Keep it hard.
So nice. And I think you've done a really good job of that. Like when you put it out there, like, oh, barber, like your name, it's like Roberto. Like definitely go there. So have you ever noticed any signs of mental health struggles in your clients? And if so, how did you address it? And if you haven't, how would you address it?
Sí, he visto muchos clientes con problemas personales y es triste ver muchos jóvenes con adicción. Y una de las cosas que sí me gusta en mi oficio es que en este momento que estamos se abren y me cuentan de su momento, y es el donde yo me siento que soy un poco más que barbero, un mentor, como se dice, como una persona que te puedo dar un consejo positivo, porque he estado en ese momento donde me he sentido con depresión. ¿Puedo traducirlo?
Has seen clients that come with personal issues, and it is sad that especially youth. He has seen youth come in with addiction problems, and that's the time where he realizes that he's not just a barber, because he feels like he can be a person to confide in. They open up and they talk about their issues, and he has also been in those positions, so he gets to give advice and offer a safe space for the clients.
Estar positivo, y siempre recuerda que siempre hay gente que quizás estén en el mismo problema o peor problema que tú, y que tú puedes ser una persona a seguir y combatir ese momento que tienes en la vida, que si te sientes deprimido o te sientes con cualquier tipo de adicción, siempre se puede arreglar, que don't give up.
And so the advice that he gives to the clients or the people he comes across is stay positive and think that some other people also face these issues or even worse. And you can be a role model if you work hard and trust yourself in the process.
Yeah. And I think that kind of answers the question as to a bit about how you build community, which is realizing when you can step outside of that barber role to also be a mentor, to also be that shoulder to lean on, to fill in that gap for whatever that person needs at that time. The stigma that exists around mental health, like why don't we talk about it? So like, what are your thoughts on that?
When I open up to you, I expect like solution, and you're going through something yourself, so I don't want to like impose my issues on you. So that's
Kind of just not wanting to be a burden.
Yeah, not to be a burden of someone else.
But like, again, that's a part of the stigma. Why do we see mental health or dealing with mental health struggles as something that automatically puts you in this position where you're going to be a liability or it's a bother to someone?
And I've been in situations whereby you discuss about your mental health and it's used against you. Probably so people are always like being careful when it comes to sharing that part of them, and also sharing your mental health in public, like you said, probably in like the barbershop. I mean, it's a lot.
No, I've never opened up to my barber about mental health issue or anything like that. And the reason being is because culturally in the Bahamas, you don't talk to your barber or anyone about mental health or what's going on in your mind. You immediately getting picked on and teased and things like that. Anxiety, like you would get the stinkest face ever if you ever say, bro, I'm feeling anxious right now. So it was never a thing.
Yeah, we don't see mental health issues as something so important to talk about in the barbershop. So That's why.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the space for it. If you have mental health issues, that doesn't mean you can't you don't have any control over your life.
It's a liability though, because if I counting on you to do something or show up for the team or whatever, and you having a bad day, like come on.
It's because then that kind of lends when you
And then again, it's consistency, right?
Yeah.
If you consistently every week you come into the office crying, you getting fired. But if it's like, if you come to me and it's like, okay, I ain't feeling too good today, I understand that because I don't feel good every day. But you gotta have some sort of strength up there. Strength, some sort of strength, yeah.
And then, okay, so what I'm hearing is that having serious mental health issues is associated with not being as strong.
Yeah, mentally, you're not there. Because the mind, that's where everything starts. Everything starts. You can't do or not do if you don't have some type of grip on your emotions and your mind. So if you consistently feel in any type of way, that is a liability.
I want to challenge that.
Challenge, let's hear it.
My thing is the person in that situation is only having that be the case. Like they're only going through it every single day because they don't have an outlet to express what's going on with their mental health. And like if you think about it, everybody has mental health. It's just there's mental illness and there's mental health. And all mental illnesses have a spectrum of where they lie. It's like, for example, going to the extreme, someone who's bipolar isn't going to be experiencing that every single day. Like it varies. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on life.
Right.
And so I feel like it's maybe not a fair judgment to say like if that person's crying, like I guess judgment's judgment, but the space we want to kind of create is like ask questions as to why that person's crying every day, as opposed to being like you crying every day, you gotta go.
Okay.
Like how do we create an environment? How do we change the narrative from that person's a liability to how can we as a community come together to help this individual with whatever they're experiencing?
Okay.
And so my next question that kind of jumps into that is how can we promote that awareness and education within our community?
You ask us how often we have a space to have these conversations, it'll probably be zero, right? Or very low. So we're not having these conversations that often. We're not being educated on what these things are, what it looks like, what assistance is there for you, these kind of things. So it has to start with having a space to have those conversations first, and then having the right conversation.
On the island, I think we have less mental health professionals.
Yeah.
So one way to do that is also suggesting like someone who they could talk to, because not everyone wants to like open up to strangers, right?
That's true.
Even if they're friends, so they could probably talk to like a professional, definitely.
What can you do to support that individual? So the question is, what can you currently do, or what do you currently do, or what can you start doing to support anyone in your life who is dealing with mental health struggles?
I would give them advice based on what I've been through and what I did to get myself in a better state mentally. And if it's something that's way out of my wheelhouse, I go and I direct them to someone, or I send that someone to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I do that.
Okay, well said.
Yes, it's very important to listen to them, because maybe they have never had someone in their life to have that conversation before, and I could make a huge difference. But then there's a point where you have to get them in touch with a professional, right, and to have that help. And I think that's where some of the gaps lie even for us, because for me, I haven't personally been introduced to a therapist, thing like that, right? So I think that's another. I could also answer your previous question, is that we need to have more conversations with mental health professionals between the BIPOC community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having this barbershop talk, so we get our haircut and talk, I always saw the barbershop as like, okay, that's a space for men to, make themselves, men or women, to come in, get their haircut, look nice, indulge really in terms of taking care of yourself. So if that's happening physically, why can't it happen mentally?
We ain't comfortable talking about it around other men. It gotta be one-on-one. I don't want the chance of the guy next to me knowing what's going on exactly. So I don't think the barbershop is the best place for mental health talks.
So where would you say?
I would say definitely with someone you trust. No matter what level they at, you gotta start with someone you trust.
Yeah.
So yeah, start from there. I can't think of a space you would go, but definitely a person you trust.
Kind of like you gotta create a space for yourself.
Exactly.
Like, so, if you was in here by yourself with your barber,
Right.
you felt like talking to you, you start
Yeah, I could do that.
Some certain individuals naturally feel comfortable with me talking about whatever they're going through with their barbers. I mean, I've seen myself in that situation once, right? But it was based on, money and business, basically. But another safe space should be probably like an hangout or stay at home with your friends. Probably you guys are just, playing the PS5 or something. Just chip it in and yeah, that could be like a safe space as well. Yeah.
How do you or how would you create a safe space that's comfortable for your clients to talk about anything that may be bothering them?
So if I'm good with my client, so we're gonna create a bond so that he's gonna trust on me.
Yeah.
So that he can tell me his feelings, that how is he feeling, how was the day, and all these things. So this is how we can share feelings and we can create a good atmosphere that he's in safe hands, that he can talk about his life, his things, his day. So that is how it's gonna happen.
So really curating the environment to make someone feel comfortable enough once they sit in your chair to start that conversation. And so I have a question for you to answer, but also to extend to Evelyn here. What are your thoughts on the stigma that exists around mental health? I know, big question, big
That's a
loaded
big
one.
question.
Yeah.
Can you be more specific?
It just thoughts, like we know what stigma is. It's
Yeah.
the stigma that exists, whereas nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
It's like from earlier today, everyone was saying like, you
Yeah.
don't come and talk about it because
Oh,
you don't want
man,
someone
yeah.
to hear. But I mean, just in general, like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like, the thing about mental health is we see a lot of stuff right now about self-care, right? And I think that for a lot of people, they don't understand that mental health is a spectrum. And so I think they immediately jump to mental illness. And I think earlier some of the comments were really interesting to hear because you could watch that happen in real time, right? That stigma that we are talking about now showed up in the conversation. And it's interesting because nobody says anything about a woman who takes a bath and like that being self-care, and that's not stigmatized. But the second you talk about, oh my gosh, me going to the barbershop so I can look like myself helps my mental health, people are like, well, I don't know about that. And so I think for me, it's a really interesting spot as a woman who comes into a men's barbershop, in theory, to get a haircut, because you see a lot of that stigma around me talking to Roberto and Roberto talking back to me. Now, when this place is full and music is going, you can't hear our conversation, but they watch him talk to me, I talk to him, and they're like, what's happening? For some of them, they're silent. And you can watch their barbers trying to like engage and trying to create this environment for them. And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. But it's funny because, I come in, I sit down, Roberto says, how's your wife? I say, you know how she is, still running everything. I'm still not in charge. Don't cut too much off the top. And we can have that kind of conversation in a way that kind of challenges that stigma in real time for people. And you can watch them as we're chatting, be like, oh, okay, well. And then, one of the other guys will say something to their client, and they'll be like, oh, well, you can see them start to open up a little bit, right? I feel like it's really interesting because it can be that place if you want it to be. I don't know if why people think their barber has to be their therapist, but why also their barber can't also just be somebody they talk to. Yeah. Roberto's an unbiased third party. He's been married longer than I've been alive. No kidding. He's not that old. He's been married a long time. And so if I am being like, yo, I don't know what to say to my wife, I can say, Roberto, yo, my wife, I think she's tripping. She does this, she says this. And he'll be like, I don't know about that. Have you thought about this, right? And it's just another way for me to get a second opinion on something that's happening in my day-to-day. I think we got to carry everything by ourselves, right? And so for me, it's just another way to be like, actually, this particular thing, I don't have to guess. I don't have to F this up on purpose.
Yeah.
I can ask somebody who has been married, who did move here from somewhere else, how I can navigate that same situation in my own household in a way that doesn't cause any problems while I'm getting a haircut.
That's fair. And like, one thing that stuck with me is how you said, like, other people may not feel as comfortable doing that, but it just takes kind of going deep to get to that level and feeling vulnerable and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in the first place.
Yeah. Well, and it's consistency, right? PI doesn't really have a barber culture. Like, not really. It's new. And so for a lot of people, they don't go to the same barber every 2 weeks, every week, every other week in the same kind of way. So they don't build that trust in the same way. You know, I've been coming into the shop for a year and some change, right? And so I've been seeing the same kinds of guys cutting my hair, the same kinds of guys come in and out. And for me, it makes a lot of sense that I will now say to Roberto, hey, man, what do I do about my wife in this thing? Because I've been talking to him for a year and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel comfortable being like, hey, how's your family? How's your daughter? How's your wife? I can ask him that now. And it's not off-putting. And I don't feel like I can't be honest because we have that relationship.
Roberto, I want to say thank you so much for allowing us to have Barbershop Talks here in your shop. It's been an honor to sit down and have this time where we can answer some questions on mental health. Thank you so much, a million. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.